Welcome to the Courage to Live podcast. My name is Josh Bitsko, and I'm a retired police captain with 24 years of experience out of Las Vegas. Currently, I travel the country and I teach people about courage, resilience, and leadership. Joined by my wife and co-host, Jenna.
Hi.
And before we get into the podcast, actually yesterday was opening day of baseball, but I think it was just like the Giants and the Yankees, so nobody really cares. Both teams that the Dodgers have beaten recently. So that's why I'm wearing my Dodgers shirt. And you just sent me it was like an ad for the Dodgers. Like they did winning the World Series, and the whole thing is like, it's fun to cheer for the bad guy.
Yeah.
Because, they're the evil empire of baseball right now.
Which I thought was really clever, actually. And I think it's going to really make people upset.
Which I love.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think people forget the Dodgers had, ever since 2020, before that, it was 1988, the last time they won a World Series. So, I mean, every year has been a rebuilding year. So I'm going to enjoy it while we're here.
Yeah.
Because you remember when we first got together, how when it came to the Dodgers, I was just like, I just was a terrible fan.
Yeah. And when we got together, the Warriors were winning, and now we're in some rebuilding years. Yeah. Literally everyone is hurt.
Is it a rebuilding year when you don't have any young players? It just seems like it's a decaying year.
That we do. And his name... We have a lot of young players, but one just got injured a couple nights ago, Moses Moody, who's 23. I'll give you that he doesn't look 23. He looks a little bit older than that, but he tore his patella tendons, right? Mm-hmm. That was really disgusting.
It was pretty gnarly looking. Yeah. I felt bad because he was having a great game.
He was having a great year.
I think we should start a sports podcast.
Nobody wants to hear what we have to say about sports.
Good point.
You're a Dodgers fan. Nobody wants to hear it.
Yeah.
Except other Dodgers fans.
Yeah. And so, maybe that's just our audience. But anyway, and back on the rebuilding year for the Warriors, I think you need like a young star. You have some young talent, but you don't have like a young star.
Yeah.
Like a
I know, because
Cooper Flag or something like that.
Because our star, Steph, who I love and will always love, he's getting up there in years and injured. Yeah. A lot.
So what I would say is probably next year or the year after will be the rebuilding year. This is just the decaying years.
Hey. Anyways, we love them.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
So in today's podcast, we're going to talk about the recent active shooter incident at the Synagogue. Jenna's going to kind of go through the details, and then we're going to talk about just based on what is initially out there, some of the lessons learned and really what, takeaways if you're a business or a church, what you can do to prepare for something like that. And then also, touch on, we always do, law enforcement officers, how to prepare yourself mentally for responding to something like that.
So this happened on March 12th of this year. So just a couple weeks ago in Bloomfield Township, Michigan at Temple Israel. And which, oddly enough, the second that I heard about this, I thought, this is a copycat of what happened with the church shooting in Michigan.
The LDS church, right?
The LDS church. That was that last year?
I think it was earlier this year.
You sure?
No.
Okay. Probably should have looked that up.
Yeah.
I think it was last year. Anyways, and this one was very similar to that. A man drove a vehicle into the synagogue building and entered while people were inside, including children. He fired a weapon inside the building, and armed security engaged the attacker and ended up killing him. A fire broke out linked to materials in the vehicle, causing smoke inside the building. So that's really the gist of it and all the information that we have at this time. We know that a security guard was injured and struck by the vehicle. Multiple individuals were treated for smoke inhalation. No congregants or children were killed. And FBI is investigating, and they are describing it as an attack of violence against the Jewish community. Oh, and the suspect had ties to Lebanon, but he was a U.S. citizen. And the motive is possible grievances and broader geopolitical tensions, but that's still under investigation.
Well, and there was just recently an active shooter on 6th Street in Austin, and I think that was not targeted necessarily towards the Jewish community, but the initial reports was inspired by what's going on in Iran. So just something always to be aware of is the geopolitical, scene really can impact not just the, locations of these, active assailants, but, the intent, why they're doing it, and which can also change tactics, right? I mean, this one was very similar to the LDS shooting in Michigan because they both involved a vehicle used as a weapon at the initial.
And a church.
And at a church. They were both grievances towards that church or a religion. So, I mean, there are some commonalities there, but just something to be aware of is that it's good to have an understanding of what's going on, especially if you're in law enforcement or, security, and you have to have your responsibility is to protect innocent people, like a church or a school. It's good to have an idea of what's going on around the country and around the world, because that can really just change maybe even minute details of what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And so a couple unconfirmed, and this was me talking to people in that community, initial reports that he was shot by security. Then one of the reports is when he was engaged by security, he shot himself, which, we know, and I say it all the time when I'm teaching about this stuff is, generally it's one of three things. The suspect gives up. Suspect is killed by police or armed security or armed citizen, or the suspect takes their own life. And most of those, if not all the time, are precipitated by some sort of armed response, be it security or police, engaging the suspect, which is why, we talk about the response and making quick decisions and making as corrective decisions as you can, given the information you have and the chaos going on around you, is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a couple of things that went really well on this. This was unconfirmed, but what I was told.
But this was speaking to people who are involved in the security of these Jewish synagogues specifically.
Correct. And it was actually showing me some pictures of the scene. And that the suspect actually drove the vehicle in the church and was driving basically down a hallway when he was engaged while in his vehicle by the armed security officers. And had he not been engaged, had he been able to continue driving down that hallway and crashed into the back of the building, there was 120 kids in a classroom in the back where he was on that path. And, we've seen a couple of these recent ones where they do, like we talked about, I just talked about in this, is that using a vehicle as a weapon.
Right.
And that's nothing new. There's, that
happened in New Orleans, right?
Mm-hmm.
On New Year's.
Yep. And, you look at when I was over the Las Vegas Strip, that was always a concern of mine because yes, we have bollards, and we'll talk about bollards and what they do especially for businesses like this or churches or schools, to stop vehicles as a weapon. But I mean, drive down the Strip and see how many people are in a crosswalk at any given time. And you can't put bollards on a crosswalk, right? They have they have the elevated walkways where, you're not down on the street, but, you get other places on the Strip there are crosswalks. And so vehicle being used as a weapon is a very big concern anytime you have pedestrian traffic or large outdoor areas. But there are some things that, you can do as a business or a church or a school to at least environmentally to prepare for something like this. And then there's, from data collection, reporting, and other things. And I figure we can break some of those things down right now for, those that are listening. And, if you are responsible for, large groups of people, the security of large groups of people, if you're not already doing, then maybe you can start doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one, which they did, is having armed security. And I can't tell you how many times I've talked to, businesses or schools or churches, like, we just don't like the optics of having an armed security guard in front. Well, the reality is as society changes and the threat landscape changes, we have to change how we secure people, how we keep people safe. I mean, look at, air travel before 9/11, right? Going through security, how drastically different it is because of 9/11. And then a couple other ancillary incidents, like you had the, guy with the bomb in his shoe, which is now why we take off our shoes, and, different.
We don't have to do that anymore.
Well, we don't actually.
You do.
I do, because I literally, for some reason, I don't know if I have too much iron in my blood or what, I set off the scanner every time, and I have to get patted down and take my shoes off. Literally, I warn him too. I'm like, just let you know, I set off the scanner.
Remember a few weeks ago when I was wearing sandals? Because I was like, oh, we don't have to take off our shoes anymore. So I'm wearing sandals, and they told me the sandals were too thick. So I had to take them off, and I didn't have socks with me. And my blood was boiling at a 12/10. I cannot tell you something more gross than walking through freaking security in bare feet. Try not to swear because I know kids listen to this podcast. Why, I don't know. But anyways, so walking through bare feet, then I'm on the tram spraying my feet with antibacterial spray. So anyways, all that to say, I now keep socks in my bag, but keep going about security and why that's important.
But can you imagine how many people before you walked barefooted through that went through that security line?
That's why I was at a 12/10.
Yeah.
I could have got MRSA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, most of them had shoes on, so it was just whatever they walked in getting up there.
So the shitty ass the crappy bathrooms.
Bathroom, or the people that didn't wear thick sandals that didn't have to take them off.
Oh, never again.
Yeah. So anyway, we digress. The air travel has changed since 9/11, right? Look at outdoor venues since the 1 October shooting, how that has changed. They're checking rooftops around and drones deployed and checking, you can't hang a do not disturb sign on a room pretty much anywhere in the country anymore and have people not come into your room. Like, all of these things have changed. So, it is a balance between overprotecting and having, you don't want an armed SWAT team in front of a church or something like that. But, having a visual deterrent first off and somebody that can respond. I was talking to a local church here about that. This was after the LDS church shooting. Like, well, we have a lot of off-duty police officers that go to our church that, and the expectation is that they're going to be there, act and get involved. And, it's a mixed bag. I'm not just saying that, whether they're able to handle it or not, that's a whole nother discussion, but whether they even take a gun with them. And then they have no armor, they have no radio, they have no anything else but, maybe a gun. And what are they carrying? Is it like a 5-shot revolver? And so you have a suspect comes in with a rifle and explosives and crashing a car into it. And I have, my little pea shooter rifle or pea shooter revolver that I'm going to engage them with. But
also for me, the optics thing, it doesn't make sense to me because as a church goer, I want those optics. I want people to see and think twice about attacking. I don't know. I've never understood that.
No, I agree. I think that is a antiquated way of thinking.
Yeah.
We just want people to feel safe. Well, they're going to feel safe, especially, go home and turn on the news and see what's happening around the country. Mm-hmm. But so that was usually why and then also cost, right? It comes down to a cost. And I know a lot of, especially the synagogues, they just hire special events officers or overtime officers, which because it's cheaper than hiring a full-time person, having an employee and benefits and everything that comes with hiring a security officer to be there all the time, right? If you just have somebody there when church or mass is in session. So, but so I think a lot of them do that, but a lot of them don't have anything. There's no visual, deterrent.
Well, and it also feels like, because we tried to talk to some churches after the LDS attack, and it feels like there's not a lot of interest in it, securing. And I'm not sure what that is about either.
Yeah. No.
We offered our services for free.
Yeah.
And no one has taken us up on that.
Yeah.
So,
but then we have other businesses and places around the country that are paying for our services. So
correct.
It's just, it comes down to a culture of the business, culture of the church. And, that is ultimately what it comes down to. And also, a relationship with your local police department, mm-hmm. because they have, experts or specialists that could also come out and look
right.
And so you have I'd say the first one and this one that they had armed security there. And that right.
That's what's, to me, in all the things that we read about this, is what stopped it. Was having that in place is what prevented it from going farther.
What stops a bad guy with a gun? Good guy with a gun. So I think that, that would be the number one, right, for anywhere. It's twofold. It's having somebody that has the ability to engage if something's happening, and also a visual deterrent.
Yes, and kudos to that security officer. If security indeed, well, they did engage the suspect. Yeah. It's just a debate on if they killed him or he killed himself, right? So, but just having the courage to engage him, like, that's fantastic.
Well, yeah, and regardless of whether he shot himself or the security officer shot him, it was the actions of the security officer or officers that engaged him that saved how many lives?
Yeah.
And so if that's not a testament to that, hiring an armed security. And listen, you can, I'm a believer of having him like in uniform. We were at our son's flag football tournament and went and got coffee, and there was a armed security officer that was all tacked out in front of a coffee shop, and we went to get coffee. Oh, yeah. And we're like, oh, what's he doing standing out there? I'm like, it's a visual deterrent. He's a big guy. And I mean, oftentimes I see him and they have like the baton holder with no baton or an empty holster or whatever.
He had a gun.
Yeah. Oh, no, he didn't. Well, it wasn't a great neighborhood.
That's true.
But having that, it's a visual deterrent. We saw it pulling in there. Like, well, they actually have somebody there. It was for the whole complex, not just the coffee shop. But just again, that's a testament that works on different levels. But they don't have to. If you want somebody that can engage, but you don't want that visual, you can have somebody in a suit.
Yep.
And I know casinos on the Strip, they have security that is unarmed, and then they have security that's armed in a suit, and they have a lapel pin. It's not like a gun. It just is like the company, but that's usually an indicator, or could be an indicator that the person's armed. And so just, something to think about. So that's, our number one. But then there's environmental or, structural changes that you can do. And, there's churches here in town that, that we've been to or seen, and there's like doors on literally all four sides of the church, and none of them are locked. So, again, you don't have to lock it down like Fort Knox. But having a single point of entry, can people get out at the end of the, end of mass or, the services is easy? No. But again, there's these small give and takes that you have to do to make sure that people are safe. So, and it's how much you want to spend, can spend. You can have electronic doors, things that, again, the doors automatically lock, but you can also unlock them. There's companies that you can do it all from an app now. It's a lot more easier integrated than needing an actual like command center or, security operations center or something like that. But having, access, having surveillance, like videos, and the surveillance can be a visual deterrent, but not generally. But what it can do, especially if you have access to it, that if something is happening or going on, you can show in real time to the first responders. Like, it's good intelligence to have. And it all comes down to hardening your target, or being a harder target, because they generally pick soft targets for this. That's why it happens at schools and malls and churches, because, it's, our people that generally do this, honestly, are just cowards, right? They have a grievance with government, but I'm going to take it out on a church or a school because, they know there's generally not somebody armed there, and they can go and kill a lot of people and make headlines. And that's the political side. But even the, whether we call it mental illness or evil people that do active shooter incidents, they pick the places that they know they're going to be able to kill as many innocent people, and there's not somebody armed there. Yeah. And the same thing goes for, locking doors. These last two that we've talked about, where a vehicle was used as a weapon, and what you can do to prevent that is bollards. And what a bollard is like a metal or concrete, pole that goes in the ground to keep a car from driving into the building. And I think people, again, oh my gosh, that looks terrible. But, a perfect example is look at Target. Yep. What do you think those big concrete spheres are in front of Target? They don't really look like anything, but they're there and heavy, so people can't drive right into the building.
I did not know that till you just said that. Yeah. My kids always, when they were little, wanted to climb on top of them and have me take their picture. Yeah. But I just thought they were decorative.
Yeah, well, but they're concrete and giant, and so people can't drive in. And now you'll start noticing in a lot of businesses, and these big, national businesses have those in front, something like that. It's all to prevent people from driving into the building, especially in those like glass doors. Doesn't mean you can't crash into like concrete and all that, but generally that's going to stop a vehicle anyway, do damage, or like at the LDS church, pull people out. So something to think about. But yeah, stopping a vehicle from going in, because imagine a vehicle getting through those glass doors at Target. Driving through Target, how many people could get hurt or killed?
Right.
In a lot of tourist destinations, you drive down the street, there's bollards all down the street. They don't have.
They do have those on the strip.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the entire strip.
Yeah.
And so another thing for a business, and you don't necessarily need them 360, just on doors where someone can get through, or entry points where a vehicle could get through. And there's companies that do it. They can come out and tell you, hey, this is where you need to put these. But again, it's like we can hold out and say, well, we don't. It's a low chance it's going to happen here, or we just don't like the optics of it. We want people to feel safe. Yeah. But
wait for, there's people. Well, then gun control, and we're not going to get into that because this is not a political podcast. But the reality is that this is where we're at right now, and these are things that you can do right now. So you can wait for gun control. You can wait for, the chance of this happening is low, or you can do something about it and take active measures to prevent you, your congregation, and the children inside.
Yeah. And I say this all the time. I've said this like as a leader, probably since I was a baby sergeant. It's like, you got to live in the world you live in, not the world you want it to be. Like, it'd be great to not have to worry about these things, but unfortunately we do. And we are always going to have to. Yep.
Like, there is no way around that. It doesn't matter what side of the political argument you're on. The reality is we will always have to worry about this. Yep. So there are things we can do to help mitigate.
Absolutely. And keep people safe. What I hear from businesses and all the time is like, especially from like the security apparatus of businesses, well, the company itself doesn't invest in security because they don't bring money in. Like, it's like, we don't invest in security because we would rather invest in marketing or these things that generate revenue. But you have to think about, but what's the revenue lost if you didn't do what you had to do?
Yep.
And a bunch of people died on property, and now you're getting sued and all of that, and the negative publicity and everything. So
when these are seemingly easy fixes, yes, they cost money, but these are seemingly, I say easy, but easy to do, to ensure safety and to ensure the public knows that you're doing everything that you can to keep them safe. Oh, one other thing I wanted to talk about, that when we were talking about this podcast earlier, was, churches, synagogues. I'm specifically referring to places in smaller towns. We were talking about, if you have suspicious activity or there is somebody threatening your church, yes, absolutely call the police so that that's documented, but also keep a log of it yourself. Keep a log of the suspicious activity, what you saw, identifiers, if it's somebody coming into your church. And yes, call the police so that there's something on record of it, but also keep that for yourself so that if something happens or, it's the same person over and over again, you have record of it yourself. We were just talking about how, there is, in bigger cities, there's the resources to have counterterrorism units and all these things that can help keep track of that suspicious activity. But if you're in a smaller place and your police department doesn't have those resources, it's important for you as a church, as a school, whatever, to, yes, always call the police. Yes, always document it, but in that way, but also keep that documentation for yourself so that you can also show, hey, this is what's been going on. We've kept record of it. It was just another idea that we thought of to help with a little bit more of the target hardening, I guess. But
and just record keeping, and so you can, the next time you have to call the police and you get a different patrol officer, because like you mentioned, New York, Miami,
Vegas.
LA, Vegas, they have the resources, counterterrorism, fusion centers, and all of that. But this problem isn't a big city problem. It's a nationwide problem. In fact, yes, I'm sure if I really thought about it, I could name, other than obviously the ones I've been involved in, some active shooters in big cities. But a lot of times you hear, small towns, small cities, because it is across the board. It can happen anywhere. So you may be a church in a city or a town that doesn't have all of those resources on the police department. So you call it in and you make it just a different patrol officer that responds.
And sometimes you don't have analysts or detectives, or they're overburdened to connect the dots that need to be connected. So if you're keeping a log yourself, you're able to then give that to the police or connect the dots yourself to then give to them and say, hey, this is what we've seen. This is what's going on. And that will help immensely.
Yeah, because when somebody shows up, they'll take it more serious. On this date, this person did this. On this date, we got an email saying this, or a phone call, or threats, and you have a package. It lends to what we do for the business as far as tabletops is a tabletop, getting all the people in the room and preparing for a tactical response, but it's preparing for this stuff before it happens.
Yes.
Right? Oh, what are we going to do if somebody shows up and makes a threat or spray paints, anti-Semitic phrase on the side of the church? But now if you have it all together, when an officer shows up, it helps them do what they need to do. And, it's funny. I was just on the phone yesterday with somebody from South Dakota, and we were talking about the policing there. He's like, there's counties that have one sheriff, not meaning one sheriff and he has deputies that work for him. No, it's one sheriff for the entire county.
Yeah.
And he has to rely on like state police to back him up and other jurisdictions. But yeah, one sheriff. So you're helping them out by providing them with the details and all of that. But it was a really good point, but it's preparing before these ever happen and getting everybody in the room. So what's going to happen when these things pop off. And then there's the tactical side, obviously, like preparing, okay, this is happening at our church. We have armed security that's engaging, but who's going to call 911? What are we going to tell them? What information are we providing? Are we going to shelter in place? Are we going to evacuate? Figuring all of this out before you need it. Because in the chaos, it's so much harder. It's going to be hard even if you're prepared, but it won't be impossible. It won't be this, mountain that you can't climb because you're prepared for it.
Well, and we do both of those things. So if you work at a church or a school and you feel like you need some help with tabletops, getting everybody in the room to plan and prepare for something like this, or even live exercises, which is a live scenario with public safety partners, people that work at the church or the school, city officials, all of that getting together and working through if an active threat were to happen, let's see what we would do in that chaos, and then let's learn from it.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, thank you for listening today. If you like the podcast, please share it with a friend, subscribe, leave a review. And some of the things that we've talked about today is in my book, The Courage to Live, which is available on Amazon. And I appreciate you spending time with us today.